Which would be worse, to live as a monster or die as a good man? This question isn't just the end of Shutter Island, it's the story's deepest structural truth. Hi, this is Theo and welcome to Narrative Autopsy, where I dissect why stories work or don't by examining the narrative engines underneath them. Stage 1. The core question. Shutter Island is built on a structure that Christopher Booker would classify as voyage and return, a plot where the protagonist enters an unfamiliar world, becomes overwhelmed, and attempts to escape, transformed or destroyed. But Scorsese added a bit of a twist through interpretation. Teddy's journey outward to the island is actually a journey inward, into memory, guilt, and psychological collapse. McKee also has an angle on this approach. The story's controlling idea is that truth, when unbearable, forces the mind to create narrative illusions for survival. In this chaotically organized video, we're exploring how Shutter Island aligns classical story theory with cinematic technique to construct a world that audience believes, even when it's a lie. Stage 2. World as metaphor. Jonathan Gottschall argues in Storytelling Animal that humans understand life through narrative shape. We impose story logic onto chaotic reality, and Shutter Island uses this instinct against us. The island is isolated, storm-wrecked, and hostile, aligning with Booker's pattern. The hero enters a world where the rules no longer apply. This echoes into German Expressionism, where environments become psychological projections, fog, crashing waves, and labyrinthine hallways that reflect Teddy's fragmented psyche. This resonates because our brains are wired to interpret world equals internal state. When Teddy is confused, the world feels confusing. When Teddy is overwhelmed, the storm intensifies. This environmental mirroring draws us into his perspective. Section 3. The character engine. Teddy Daniels fits multiple classic narrative frameworks. From McKee, he has a clear want to solve the mystery, but his true need to confront his trauma drives the story's emotional arc. From Propp, Teddy believes he is the hero pursuing the villain, but structurally he is a false hero, a protagonist whose self-perception is flawed. Chuck, meanwhile, is the helper, or a mirror character who appears supportive but actually fulfills the caretaker's function. From Campbell as well, we're looking at Teddy's journey that mirrors the Monomyth. Step 1. The call to adventure, the missing patient. Step 2. A descent into the belly of the whale, which is word C. Step 3. Atonement with the father, which is basically the lighthouse confrontation. And step 4. The return, the final walk to the steps, except that Teddy actually chose not to return. The emotional gravity comes from watching a heroic structure collapse into tragedy. Why do we believe Teddy's perspective? Well, because of the authority heuristic. We trust characters that look competent, a badge, a uniform, and confident movement signaling reliability. Our brains surrender to Teddy's POV before the plot even begins. Section 4. The plot engine. Shutter Island uses what narrative theorists call coherent misdirection. The clues Teddy finds are false, but they are internally consistent with his worldview. Humans prefer a coherent lie to an incoherent truth. This is coherence bias, and the script exploits it relentlessly. The inciting incident, which is a missing patient in our case, aligns with Propp's lack function. Something is missing and the hero must restore order. But the real purpose is therapeutic, to force Teddy into reenacting the trauma he has buried. The midpoint, the cave conspiracy, is a classic genre mask. Booker calls this a temptation stage. The protagonist is drawn even deeper into the illusion. Every scene destabilizes us using noir principles. Excessing staring, contradictory testimony, lighting that shifts without motivation, cuts that mimic hallucinations. This isn't sloppy editing, it's psychological design. Section 5. Climax and recognition. The lighthouse sequence is the story's moment of recognition, the Aristotelian anagnorisis. The truth lands like a surgical incision. Teddy is not the detective, he is the missing patient. McKee describes this as story climax, the irreversible moment of truth where all narrative forces converge. Campbell calls it atonement with the father, a confrontation with ultimate reality. Here, the reality is self-inflicted trauma. Why does the twist touch us so strongly? Because our cognitive patterns thrive on retrospective coherence. The twist recognizes everything we've seen into a new, meaningful structure. The pieces finally fit. Section 6. Thematic delivery. Booker argues that tragedies end when the protagonist is destroyed by the flaw they refuse to face. Teddy's flaw is denial, a flaw so human that it becomes universal and understood by everyone. Gottschall writes that humans use stories to simulate survival problems. Shutter Island is a simulation of the ultimate psychological problem. Can we survive our own truth? Teddy decides that he cannot, and this choice hits us because he reflects a fear at the core of humanity, that knowing the truth can destroy us. Section 7. The symbolism. Costumes reveal character psychology. Teddy's crisp martial suit is symbolic armor, a lie he wears. Replace it and the structural illusion collapses. Lighting mirrors mental state, warm yellows, memory and emotion, cold blues, reality and repression. What symbolizes the trauma? The drowning. Fire symbolizes suppressed truth, the burning apartment. Together, they form a symbolic duality representing Teddy's internal war. Propp's symbolic functions appear visually. The helper, Chuck, is always behind Teddy, guiding him subtly, never overshadowing him, because he's not a partner, he's a handler. Now, for section 8, what if? Let's test what would happen with the story if we made any abrupt changes to any detail. What if 1. Teddy wears something that's not a martial suit, but maybe a Pink Panther suit. The authority heuristic would disintegrate. No audience would believe that he's a competent investigator, although he may actually be, but will be deceived from the get-go. The narrative psychological alignment with the protagonist would evaporate. The twist would become a comedy, not a tragedy. What if number 2? The story takes place in a busy place, not an isolated island. Isolation is the story's metaphor for Teddy's mind. A city would introduce options, openness, and escape routes. The world would no longer reflect his psychological instability. The narrative would be incoherent and nearly impossible to believe. Stories are pretty much architectural. Change one load-bearing symbolic element and the structure would fail. And section 9, conclusion. Shutter Island resonates because it synthesizes multiple storytelling traditions. Booker's Voyage and Return, Campbell's Monomyth, Propp's character functions, McKee's want versus need structure, Aristotle's recognition, and Gottschall's evolutionary storytelling psychology. Together, they create a narrative where illusion feels safer than reality, for Teddy and for us. The film endures because it picks a universal human fear, that facing the truth might break us. With all that being said, like, share and subscribe if this content showed you something educational. I am Theo and this has been Narrative Autopsy. Until we meet again.